The Pincast, hosted by Safety Pin Box creators Marissa Janae Johnson and Leslie Mack. So you want to be a more effective ally in the struggle for Black liberation? Before you put that safety pin on your shirt, make sure you sign up for one of these memberships with Safety Pin Box. Sign up for the Premium Safety Pin Box, and you'll receive 3 guided ally tasks in the mail per month. Premium Box members also get exclusive access to the bi-weekly podcast, The Pincast, hosted by Safety Pin Box creators Marissa Janae Johnson and Leslie Mack. Sign up for the Pin Pals box with a friend, and you'll receive 2-person guided tasks to do together. Premium and Pin Pals box members both get exclusive access to a quarterly Think Outside the Box webinar with Leslie and Marissa, featuring special Black women guests. Sign up for the eAlly box, and you'll get 1 task per month emailed to you. All members get access to the private Safety Pin Box Facebook group, exclusive calls to action, and special free gifts. Every Sunday on Twitter, you can check in with other Safety Pin Box members at the Safety Pin Sunday Check-In hashtag. So if you are serious about being an ally when you put that safety pin on your shirt, take it a step further. Subscribe to a membership at www.safetypinbox.com/subscribe today. Safety Pin Box, effective, measurable allyship.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to is it May? I guess it's May. The May Ally Q&A.
May.
With Safety Pin Box. I am Leslie Mack, the co-founder and creative director of Safety Pin Box, and I'm joined by
Marissa Janae Johnson, and I am co-founder and content director of Safety Pin Box.
And we are here. We're going to be answering a bunch of ally questions that have been submitted by our amazing subscribers to Safety Pin Box. If you joined us at the top of the live, you saw a quick little video about our different memberships. And we're going to do a little bit of updating here at the top, and then we're going to jump right into these questions, which are all actually another month of really good submissions. I'm excited to talk about some of these topics. So the first thing, super exciting thing that happened today, we launched officially Safety Pin Box Kids.
Yeah!
Y'all have asked for it. We've been hearing so many requests for it, for things to do with children, and Marissa has put her amazing brain to work and put together an amazing 8-week summer series. So Marissa, talk a little bit about SPB Kids, and then there's some other stuff to go along with that about launching.
Yeah, so I mean, way before Safety Pin Box was ever actually a thing in the world, I was interested in creating some race curriculum for kids, and it's a thing that people were immediately asking about as soon as we launched SPB. Oh, can I use this in the classroom? But what about my kids? And no one's creating really robust content in that area, so we decided to do that. For those of you who don't know, I have a background in creating actually Sunday school curriculum and church curriculum for churches. So this was a little bit right back up my alley. And what we developed was an 8-week summer series that's intended for parents and kids to do together over the summer. And the series is called Let's Talk About Race and it goes through 4 different sections. Each section has 2 weeks dedicated to it. The first section is Race and Me. So that's having the kids start with themselves. What do they know about race? What do they know about their race? The second section is Race in My Family, stretching out a little bit more. Where do I come from? What does race mean for my family? The third section is Race in My Community. Who are the people in my community? What race are they? Who's different than me? And then secondarily, who is suffering in my community and how do we show up and support? And then the last section is Race and the World. And that's where we introduce kids to the Black Lives Matter movement and help them start to think about how that they can fit in and participate. And we originally designed this 8-week series to be primarily for white children, but we've had such a response that people want something for kids of all races as well. So we've adjusted the curriculum to be for all children, just giving everyone the disclaimer that kids will have wildly different answers based off of their identity. And there will be really different conversations, especially if the kids have different identities than their parents. And parents just need to be ready for those conversations. They're coming sooner or later. So we're excited to give people a way to step in, and the major goals of the kids' curriculum are A, to get kids used to talking about race, okay with talking about race. I've previously been a drama teacher and a nanny, and what's interesting is already by 6 years old, 7 years old, kids know not to talk about, white kids know not to talk about race, and they don't even know why they know not to talk about it. I was nannying some kids one time and was reading a copy of the Seattle Times, and on the cover it said something about the Black church, and kids looked at me and said, "Oh, well, you go to a Black church, don't you?" And we'd never talked about my race. And I said, "Well, why do you think I go to a Black church?" And then they clammed up and they were like, "Oh, I did it. We're not going to talk about it." And we, you know, they had a cousin who was biracial, you know, that we'd never talked about my race, and they knew to clam up. So we really want to get kids, we think that kids will be better served if they're used to talking about race. That's our first goal of the kids series. And then the second goal is not only to get them okay with talking about race, but to get them looking at whiteness and white supremacy critically from a young age in a way that's age appropriate. So we want kids to be able to connect the dots when talking about race, instead of being raised kind of how I was, that, oh, we're in a colorblind society and the goal is just to say, I don't see color. Instead, we want kids to be able to really critically look at their world and say, oh, wow, these are the experiences for somebody who lives in a different body than mine. How do I step in? Right? And to not be afraid of that. Because Leslie talks about a lot of times that one of the things of white supremacy is that it's shielded from it's hidden from white people, that they're taught not to be self-reflective or to give much thought into how their racial identities form their lives. And so we believe by creating kids who can do that from a really young age, we're already going to be in a better position. And so if we believe if kids have those two things, they're going to be way further ahead than their parents are, who most of them are just starting these conversations as grown adults. And we've also structured the curriculum in such a way that parents and kids are learning together. It's actually really a shame that white people just failed to raise their kids for several generations and to talk about these things that are really important, and instead just said, we don't see it, let's move on. And that's left a lot of adults and parents really struggling to the point that they don't even know how to talk to their kids about race. But what we actually see is an opportunity for kids and parents to learn together, right? This is an opportunity for parents to model humility, learning, not being perfect, struggling through something, trying to be a better person with their kids. So we've got tasks for them to do together. We've got dinner conversations. We've got some fun activities. We've also got some custom illustrations from a Black woman. That's all included in there. And then there's some reflection questions for the kids, for them to fill out. There's also some reflection questions for the parents to go through as well at the same time. Each kit comes with one parent booklet and one kid booklet. You can buy additional kid booklets. And that's our SPV summer series. And we'll talk more about that later on in the Q&A.
Absolutely. And to folks, if you're looking to just find out some more about that, you can go to safetypinbox.com/kids, and you can sign up right there. It has all the information that Marissa just mentioned. I'm just really excited about it because I think it's really going to change a lot of people's lives, really, in terms of how they relate to race. You know, I had the pleasure of meeting the two boys that you were nannying for before I stole you away for Safety Pin Box. And
shout out to Drew Troy.
Shout out to you. And one of the things that struck me was how open you were with them about all sorts of things, including race, like just even though, you know, they're little, it was just a matter of talking about the concepts in a way that they could comprehend. And instead of shying away from it, it's a challenge we need to all rise to help our children navigate a really, really complicated world. So I'm excited for people to get this. And if you order by May 22nd, you'll get on the first run, which is going to be sent out the week of June 5th. And again, it's 8 weeks worth of amazing work for you to do with your kids over the summer. Really excited to get that in everyone's hands. So check that out. We are going to blog her.
Hey!
So if you hadn't heard, Marissa and I were honored and are going to be honored, and we're named Voices of the Year for 2017 for Impact by Blog Her. And so we're going to be not only attending, but we're also going to be speaking from the main keynote stage, which is really exciting for us. We get to spread a little bit of the Safety Pin Box gospel out to the attendees at Blog Her. And we're really excited to just have an opportunity to talk about our work together and kind of our philosophy on the work that we've decided to do as business owners and as Black women in the world. Do you want to talk about the labor piece? Do you want to wait to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, we can wait to talk about that.
All right, we'll wait. So the only last thing I just wanted to mention, because some of you may have seen me earlier today, there was a 17-year-old Black teen shot here just a few blocks away from my house by police earlier today. Drew and I both rushed to the scene. Actually, Drew was pumping gas right around the corner from where it happened, and Marissa and I were literally in a meeting. We were having our weekly meeting when Drew went live, and so I just left the meeting and went over to there. I don't have much to share except for just to say it's a really tough situation. I got to speak with his parents. He's at the hospital and was taken to the hospital from there. It was, all of the triggering, horrible things that generally happen. And the first thing that I thought about when I got back to my desk after we were out there for maybe about an hour or so was, how was I going to transition back to normalcy after having had this happen so close to my home, and talking to all of my neighbors and all of them talking about all of their run-ins with the police here in Grand Rapids, and how, just them telling their stories about what happened. Something pops off, people start to gather, and then everybody starts to share all of their stories of similar interactions with police, even if they didn't end in gunfire. It did harm them in some way. And I don't have a good answer for that. I have to be honest. I actually went and sought some direct pastoral care from Reverend Susan Newman Moore from DC, and I needed to kind of get my head together. So it just, for me, was just a reminder, that life will interrupt at the most inopportune times. But I'm happy to be here tonight to talk about this other stuff and try and make a different way in the world for other people, and play a little role in changing things. So let's jump into these questions if you're ready, Marissa.
Let's do it. Sorry, I got a sun on me from the Seattle.
It's all sunny in Seattle somehow. Actually, when I went to Seattle, it was sunny there too.
It decided to come through, and my setup is not prepared for sun because we don't usually have it. So
she's sunny. All right. First question from our subscribers is, can you talk about white women aggression? Some of the examples I've seen don't look like aggression to me, so I think white women don't see their actions as aggressions if they are not being physically violent. This is a really great question. I was super excited when I saw it asked because I've actually heard it from other people, and it's good to give some context to it. So I'm sure this is in part related to the video that Dita Delgado and I did after we had some white female aggression at one of our training sessions. And it's a larger conversation about, and this is what we mean when we say white women aggression, which is the ways in which white men are able to operate in society. If you apply those same interactions and the same behavior to a woman of color, they are instantly policed. So whether it's being irate about something, having an attitude about something, being direct, being forceful. There's so many moments where you see a white woman like pop off in a way that is so rude and inappropriate, never checked, never even seen as an aggressive manner. And so that's what we say white woman aggression is, because all of our behavior is policed and seen as aggressive, even when we're not aggressive, when we're just having a direct conversation. It's like, oh, you're angry, or you're mean, or you're this, or you're that. But white women have this wide breadth of emotional outbursts that is not just acceptable, but completely accepted by society. And so when we talk about white women aggression, we talk about a way in which white women are able to be aggressive in public and in interactions with people, especially with people of color, that is not afforded to anybody else. So that's my definition and how I kind of frame it well, which is the different way in which we're policed and the different way in which our behavior is policed. I don't know if you had anything to add to what you had to add to that, Marissa.
Yeah, okay, so if you go to, I'm sure a lot of you guys follow The Truth on Twitter, and their blog, Gradient Layer, has some really great write-ups of white female aggression and white men coming and being harmful towards particularly Black women in public spaces. But to Leslie's point, this idea that white women have perpetual innocence, it's so true. I just had an experience. So I'm typically a church lady, but I'm not in church right now because it's hard to do what I do and be in the church and have people be cool to you. But actually, right shortly after the inauguration, we had a big issue at my church where the Black folks are kind of like, look, we need more out of this church. We need you guys to stop being harmful. We gotta dip. We gotta go. And they ended up not wanting to make any changes or take any action. So I dipped. I was like, take me off the membership list. We're out of here. And then retellings of how that process went through, where I and other people had drafted up a whole action plan for them and everything, had gone down, were false. And so I sent everybody a very detailed and colorful and artistically written email that told them exactly how I felt about them and their behaviors. And, instead of just being like, you guys are fucked up, being like, no, you guys are actually really fucked up. Here's exhibit A, B, C, and D. And then after all that happened, of course, no one responds to me. No one says anything to me, right? Mm-hmm. My friend Rachel was also a part of the situation, and Rachel had been talking about we need to have a church split. She's a white woman, and she had been talking about we need a church split for probably 7 or 8 months now. She's been like, this church is trash on race. We should just leave. We need to go. Well, after all of this happens, my friend Rachel and her husband end up leaving the church as well. No one reaches out to me. People reach out to Rachel, right? Even when they're talking specifically about me. And they kept reaching out to Rachel, and they kept saying, oh, Rachel, it's so bad that you got caught in the middle of this because her husband is Black. Oh, it's so bad that you got pulled into this by Marissa. Even though she had been the one who was advocating, and was using the strongest language towards them and even telling them to their face, like, you're being white supremacist, you're being abusive. And she had been talking about this for months before I did, and that she was ready to cancel everybody away from the beginning. Once I entered the situation to speak my piece on it, I became the aggressor who lured her away, right? Who had lured her away from all of her community and her friends. And the sad thing was everybody that was a part of it, all of me and my friends, we had predicted that was going to be how that played out, that as soon as I entered the situation, it didn't matter how calm I was, it didn't matter how I rationalized, it didn't matter how I brought a plan and a clear timetable. That did not matter. At the end of the day, it was going to be Marissa was the mean, angry woman who came and riled everybody up. And so that's another example of how Black women and white women are policed differently, and their behaviors are reacted to differently. That white women can literally be like, we need a church split, you guys are trash. And it won't be read as aggressive. It won't be read as serious. It won't be, and in a way, her agency was taken away from her and put on me, right? For something that I didn't do. So that's a tangible example of what Leslie's talking about there.
Yeah, I had we were just Paige and I actually, and Drew were in Kansas City for the White Privilege Conference, which I won't talk about here, but trust, you'll be hearing lots about it very soon. But one of the nights the three of us had gone out to dinner, we came back, Drew went to park the car because it was raining, horrible rain. So I was just sitting in the lobby of our hotel, and all of a sudden it was filled with drunk white people, mostly drunk white women. And I cannot explain to you how instantly my anxiety just like ratcheted up. Like they were screaming at each other. Their men were screaming at them. They were stumbling. I immediately felt like physically unsafe. And I was 2 seconds from just getting up and going up to wait like on the hall and just staying in the hallway till Drew came up, because I just knew something could go left at any moment and I would be seen as the aggressor no matter what the situation was. And that's another example of where white women are able to have a level of agency and not responsibility for their actions in social settings that can cause conflict, and then the conflict is never laid on them. And so that's another example of where white women aggression kind of shows itself a lot of times. So, yeah, so hopefully that's
watching this Q&A, or they're going to give examples in these too, because people love receipts. I'm sure Ronnie's screenshotting someone.
I'm sure somebody right now is being way too aggressive right now. And there is this notion of just, being labeled as mean when you're not really, Lena K. Garner, shout out to Lena from Black Lives of You. We have this issue all the time. We're on a collective of Black people doing work, three women, three men, and invariably we'll hear things like, oh, go talk to the men, they're nicer. They'll say slick shit like that all the time. So yeah, I mean, it's what we deal with. So,
they're nicer, but when you need something to get done.
Okay. Anyways,
Shake.
No, next question. I think that's yours.
Okay. This question: as a writer/journalist, I try to amplify Black women's work in my pieces and give credit. I also try to center and profile Black women often. I do not write about race from the place of an expert. However, what's the line between amplifying Black women and other marginalized identities I don't share and a story that someone else should write? Ideally, it'd be awesome if these publications already have Black women and staff covering these ideas, but some of those I wrote consistently don't. I would rather center Black women than not, especially in tech and business publications. White cis male is the default identity. I've also reached out to Black women of color freelancers about a story idea, but I don't want to push my ideas onto them like a PR person. When possible, which isn't often, I try to seek out sensitivity readers, but many times I'm getting paid under $100 for a single story. I've thought about donating that paycheck back to a cause like Black women being when I'm financially stable, but until then, I can potentially donate up to 20% to give back. Okay, cool. Yeah, and I know who put this one out too. I have a couple of thoughts on this one, actually. The first one is that I think if you're talking about writers and journalists, the best thing is to write from your perspective. If you're not a Black woman, don't try to write from a Black woman's perspective. And I think we've talked about this a little bit. One of the things that you can do is you can, while we do need a need for more Black voices and brown voices, what we also need is critical white voices, right? And so if you are a white person and you are going to write on something, what you can do is you can be a race trader, right? You can be critical of whiteness in how you write it, how you put it together. I think in terms of covering stories, yeah, suggesting to Black writers is cool, but don't put labor on them. So I think you're doing right there by not wanting to push that. I think it's fine for you to cover race stories, and if you have access to that, I think sharing your skill set and your expertise, helping lend networks and contacts to Black women in your field is huge. And then I think just when you do write about race or you do write a story about race, just checking all of your behavior along the way that you're being super honoring and respectful of the community that you're writing about. So, for instance, there was a journalist here in Seattle who was the one who consistently wrote about all Black Lives Matter stuff for a few years. He's no longer there. And we got into it, and I yelled at him one time in a public meeting because I thought that he had crossed certain lines with me. But even after that, I really still appreciated his work, and as long as he stayed within his boundaries, right, of not undermining the work that I felt like we were doing, I actually appreciated him and was cool. We were cool with him. The place where we had issues, and I had to call him out, was where I felt like he was stepping past the journalist line and putting his opinion into activist spaces to try to tell us what we should do, and that he was not being respectful of the people that he was covering. And so I think I think for most Black folks, right, the issue isn't necessarily a white person writing up the story as much of it as it is that person comes in being exploitive or not caring about the community, not wanting to present the community in the best light. And you have control about how you enter into those things. Leslie, do you have any feedback?
No, I think you said all the things. I thought this was a great one for you to tackle because, you're the writer among the two of us. So I thought it was a good one for you. No, I think it's really good. And then the only thing I wanted to mention was reaching out to Black women of color freelancers about a story idea. I think that's a great idea. I think maybe you can correct me if if I'm wrong. But it would be dope to collaborate on some things with some Black writers. I'm sure that would be a great way to accomplish all the things you were talking about accomplishing, which would respect their agency and allow you to have a new relationship as well with a Black woman writer that could lead to all sorts of amazing things. So that would be my only suggestion for that little piece that you mentioned.
Yeah, one other thing, sorry, connected with that you said, Leslie, that I thought about, because I just recently saw a Black woman writer talking about this. You should talk to people about how much you make at different publications, because I've heard with the Ebony O's. Shout out to my homie in Portland who wrote those pieces for the Ebony O's situation, but talking about how white writers are paid more, and then people will get commissioned for a piece and they'll get quoted a much lower number, and Black women don't even know that they're getting quoted. So even what if you pass out that story and they don't know that they're earning half as much? I mean, that's a place that you can advocate for them as much as you feel comfortable in terms of, backing them up and saying, hey, this publication paid me $400. And then when the publication says we can't, be like, hey, this is similar work, and really advocate for them as much as you can on their behalf. That is another way.
That's great. Okay, next question. Can you address allyship in the workplace / professional environment, like how to call in coworkers or even bosses, and possibly how to provide emotional support to a coworker who has experienced an aggression? Also, are the lives accessible via YouTube or something to go back to watch later? Oh, our live, yeah. Anything that's on our main page is always available in perpetuity on Facebook. And yeah, so you can always go back and watch. That's the first thing about that. Well, we're probably the worst two people to ask because we do not work in traditional workplace environments.
We created a whole ass business so we don't have to.
Literally. But I have worked in workplace environments, and I've had situations where it's been, there have been incidents or issues. It's so hard to answer this question because each workplace is so different, right? So your risk is going to be different. The interpersonal, just general relationships within any workplace are very unique. But the one thing I like to always stress in any of these situations is to really defer to the person who's been harmed as much as you possibly can. A lot of times this white savior thing kicks in, and because your intent is so good, and I want to be clear, I understand that, you tend to forget that the person that's really going to probably feel the brunt of whatever happens is the person that was originally harmed in the first place, the person of color. So my suggestion would be to really talk to them separately, privately, let them know that you are there to support them, work together to discuss what might work and what might not work, and just make sure that they are comfortable and be prepared for them to say, you know what, I don't want to do this. I don't want to fight this one. And you need to be okay with that because sometimes they don't want to. Sometimes there's that day where it's like, there's so many, if we spent all of our time as people of color, as Black people especially, railing against every microaggression and every aggression that we feel, it's all we would have time to do, especially in workplace settings. So that's the only thing I would say about that. I can't really give you a direct, here's the 7 things you should do, but I would just defer as much as you can to the person who's been harmed. Make sure that you show them support in the way that they need to be shown support, not in the way you think support should look like. And then try to create the same kind of support, like pulling other allies in. So if it's just the 2 of you, the first time something happens, the next time, like 2 of your friends, you should already be like, hey, you remember last time this happened? Well, it's happened again. Like I want to support, Jessica, or I want to support whoever. And so try and build more accomplices in the workplace so that it's not just you and it's not just the person that's harmed, but you kind of are building and changing the culture of the workplace. So those would be my suggestions for that. What you got, Marissa?
Well, and like Leslie said, which she didn't just say, the worst time to build a relationship is
when there's a crisis. Yeah. That's not when we build bridges. We want to build bridges beforehand. So before, yeah.
It pops off and you come to me, I'm not going to trust you. It's going to be like, yo, what is, but if you've already demonstrated yourself as a safe person, or at least a person that I could, interact with or whatever, I'm going to receive that help very differently when it happens in the moment. And then the only other thing that we didn't talk about that I'm thinking is a scenario where Black people aren't maybe directly harmed or whatever. So I'm thinking you're with some other white dudes in the office and they're saying some fucked up shit. What do you do? I think that's really a place where you need to take risks. It's pretty much impossible for white men to get fired. It's pretty hard for white women to get fired, but it's like pretty much impossible for white men to get fired.
Trust me, I know.
I think Leslie's looking over at us. I mean, we all know this. We've been in like workplaces, right, with white men who like barely, like, are horrible at their job and like barely do the bare minimum.
So mediocre, like extra mediocre.
Never mind. That's a side. That's a different conversation. But what I mean there is sometimes people are talking about risks of like stepping out, and I think based off of your identity, I think the perceived risk is actually a lot less for you to advocate and be like, yo, dude, that was actually really fucked up, or to go to HR and address it, right? Like, you're going to have a way less backlash against you as a white person or a white man than a Black woman would have in that space. And so really owning that power that you have, right? Because I think, whenever you tie yourself in with Black folks, you're tying yourself in to take on some of the stuff that we're taking on. But what I really want to see people do is take more risks within their identities, because I really think that sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to lose my job, or I don't want to, but that's a perceived risk that's not real. Because in reality, I don't see any white men losing their jobs over calling bosses, being racist or whatever. That's not a thing that is happening. And basically, white folks should step up more in that space. And then once you stepped up, you've addressed it, not taking credit or ownership for that win.
Very good. Okay. I agree with all of those things. And thank you for, filling in the stuff I forgot. I usually say, but that's true about this. Okay, next question. I think that's yours too.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
As I get to know more people in communities of color, are there any tips for navigating the messy or abusive sides of relationships?
Mm-hmm.
We have some abusers of color in quiet public spaces, and I know they're survivors. I recognize the abuse often comes from trauma. Is it way out of my lane to try to speak up for the survivors to have safe public spaces too? And if that's okay, how do I do that without being a white woman criticizing often men of color?
Mm.
Well, first of all, there are abusers in all of these spaces. First of all, like, someone's identity does not absolve them from being an abuser. I wrote about this actually with Alfred Sterling a year ago. I shared it a few times. Leslie and I have both dealt with it in organizing spaces to different degrees of abusive people who are around us. I think ultimately for this question, it goes back to what Leslie said about supporting the person harmed and asking them, what they need. So go back to, if you're a subscriber, in January, going back to thinking about a safe space. So what are the spaces that you control? How do you make them safe for that person? You cannot invite somebody. You cannot have somebody present at your meeting or at your gathering or whatever. Mm-hmm. And if people ask you why, you can be clear about why. I want to provide a safe space, and this person, there's certain people in the room would not feel safe. I think that you can do that, and then also going to the survivors and just following their lead about what they want to do, backing them up if they feel unsafe. And also just trying to, when you're in the room with them, trying to manage the spaces and do basically what me and Leslie do all the time, which is emergency care labor, right?
Yep.
Where you're actively in the moment trying to figure out, okay, there are things beyond my control, but how do I keep this person as safe as possible while respecting their wishes? Not really a muscle you have to flex, and you won't be able to control all of the things, right? But maybe if that person goes to stand close to that person, you could come and stand in between them, right? You could create some space. There's some different tactics that you can use, but really prioritizing the safety of those harmed in the space, and just recognizing that you don't have to let everybody in the spaces that you're in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I just go back to the same thing I said about the workplace, which is really like deferring to those survivors that are there, really trying to listen as best you can to them, and do whatever you can for their comfort to be what you're focused on. So often in moments of, racism, that proof of racism happens, and also in situations where there's abusers and survivors in the same space, we tend to focus on those that are doing the harm and not those that are being harmed. And it's a really backwards way of thinking of the scenario, because what happens is the needs of those that need to be supported are put as we'll do that later. And the confrontation piece is put as we need to do that now. And really that should be flipped on its end. And the first thing we should tend to are those that are harmed and make sure that their needs are taken care of first. And then we can determine collectively how to address the other piece and the confrontation piece. So that's the only thing I would lift up and add to that conversation. It's just, we need to start just societally flipping that entire dynamic of where we put our effort in first, and make sure support is the first thing we do, and confrontation second.
And one of the things that you can do in group settings to help depersonalize this as I'm going after this person or this person, is to have community or collective guidelines about what are the standards in the space. So instead of so-and-so told me XYZ about you, actually this is our standard that we have on safety. This is our standard that we have on sexual abuse. This is our standard that we have on patriarchy. If you don't meet those standards, then it's a collective discussion about that, right? And it's about breaching the contract. It's not about singling out particular people, because abusers are always going to have a platform. They always do. My abusers have a platform. Leslie's abusers have a platform. We can't necessarily, take that away. And I think when you're doing mixed identities, it's hard. But when you're in a group collective, it's always good to have some guidelines, so that way everybody can be there under shared principles. And when there is an issue that comes up, that you can address it under the principles in a principled way, versus trying to go after a central figure per se, and also give a space for that person to be redeemed, right? Which is another piece that we don't talk about in the conversation. Is there a way for people to enter back in after they've taken steps towards restitution with their survivor who wants to engage in that process with them? That does happen in our community, and it needs to happen in organizing spaces in order for us to do anything. Yeah.
Most definitely. Focus on the problem, not the person. So that's usually a good way to get those things kicked off. Okay. Next question. There have been a few discussions in the collective about whether it's appropriate for white people to wear BLM t-shirts, buttons, etc. The consensus seems to be that it's okay as long as you're accountable to the movement. Do you have any further insights on whether it's harmful, helpful for white people to wear BLM t-shirts, use BLM profile pics, etc.? Are there some do's and don'ts? I have thoughts on all of this. One is, stop trying to give Black people Black Lives Matter stuff, because people do that shit to me all the time. They're like, I have a Black Lives Matter button. I'm like, I know. You don't.
I've had that happen a lot.
I don't need a button because
Black Lives Matter buttons.
I'm aware that they matter. So
yeah, you're like,
there's that. So the only do and don't that I have about it is to really have a good understanding with yourself of what you're going to say if and when you're confronted for wearing whatever BLM paraphernalia you decide to wear. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, if it's not something that you put on every day, no matter where you're going, just don't put it on at all. Drew wears a Black Lives Matter wristband and also a Black Lives Matter button. And he talks about it as a spiritual practice that he has. It's something that he always wears no matter where he's going. And there's been plenty of moments. He went to the doctor the other day. He had to have a procedure, and he said, you know what? The doctor was a little rude to me in the aftercare. And I immediately was like, why was he like that? And then I remembered, of course, I had my button on, I had my wristband on, and I had a minute of sitting there like, is this why he was treating me like shit? But, that's the thing, is making sure that even in those moments where you're like, wow, it would be really easier for me to just wear my privilege right now instead of putting my beliefs first, that's where you want to always be wearing it. And so for me, that's my only do or don't, which is don't give them to Black people because we don't need them. And the second one is to, it should be a practice that you wear, most importantly, in those rooms where you feel uncomfortable wearing it, because that's the point. So that's all I have to say about that.
Mm-hmm. One would be try to consume ethically. So if you're buying BLM merchandise from a white person, you're canceled. I don't even have any like gray area for that. Number two, and then I think this goes for all Safety Pin Box subscribers. When you're a subscriber or you're saying you're ally or with Black Lives Matter, that's cool. You better be ready for any Black person, any POC to walk up to you and say, okay, Black Lives Matter, what do you do? You need to be ready for that conversation and not afraid of it, and being ready to really engage, right? You can't just wear stuff around, oh, Black Lives Matter, like I'm down for cause, and not be ready to be directly addressed about what your role is in it. Now, luckily, with Safety Pin Box, we give a lot of avenues for you to be able to tangibly say, this is what I'm participating in, right? Because it's very structured. But if the thought of a Black person coming and asking you, oh, you're ally how, scares you, then you need to go through the process of determining your commitments and being serious about it before you want to put on any outward display. And you should welcome and invite conversations if people say, oh, that's cool, you have a BLM, blah, blah, blah. And take that as a space to say, yeah, I think we need to show up more. And to call if other white folks ask you about it, ask them, oh, Black Lives Matter. I think Black Lives Matter too. Cool, what are you doing? This is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like it should be used as a way to help raise the stakes. So if you're just wearing BLM because it makes you feel cute or good or whatever, then like, cool, you're an average white person. But preferably you should be prepared for some questions and to have a really clear answer for when people ask you, okay, Black Lives Matter, what does that mean to you? Besides just, I believe this thing, or I think this thing, or I have this thought, but what does it mean to you in a way that's tangible and measurable?
Yes. The only other thing I would add is this is something my mother-in-law, she says that she always has extra buttons and wristbands on her person, so that if she does meet a white person that's like asking her and they have a good conversation, she gives them to other white people. So that's it.
Which you can get Safety Pin Box cards, and you can give them that.
Yeah. You do. You get at least one in every box. You do. So yeah. So those are our do's and don'ts when it comes to BLM. All of the things. But I will say the other thing I will mention is, like, if you're going to a march, if you're going to a protest, if you're going to, especially if it's not race specific, that's when you should be wearing your BLM. Like, I want to see at the science march, at the climate march, at the women's march. Like, that's when you want to show up with that message, so people understand that the intersection of race and whatever else they're talking about needs to be addressed too. So
you know that you're giving the announcements at church. BLM shirt.
BLM shirt. Okay, cool. Next one.
Another STB Kids question. I like it. I was thinking of trying to get a group of parents and kids to do meetups over the summer. That's a great idea.
Cool.
Will materials fit with that model, or will this content work best one-on-one? I would not share my materials. The expectation would be for every family to buy their own. First of all, shout out to you for reading our terms and conditions.
Shout out.
We literally even got somebody who said, yeah, I want to buy your content and put it in a library. So many people want to abuse our content. So thank you for not doing that. Yeah, so I think definitely, I mean, the content does have parts that are good for one-on-one, but I think doing this in a group format as well would be really good, and parents can think about that, and there's lots of different ways to do it. So there's parent pre-work that's included, so maybe the parents talk about their pre-work before they have their conversations with their kids. I don't think it should only happen in the context of a group, but I think a mixture of group and one-on-one stuff would be really powerful, especially as we're talking about that some of it is to work through the shame that white people have around talking, or white kids have around engaging race, to do that with their friends, right? And to see that that's hard, that could be a powerful tool as well, as long as the adults are being honest in those exchanges. You get a bunch of kids together and you teach them that when we get together, we all make sure we look good, and we all make sure that we don't have any baggage, and we're none of us are racist, and we play it safe, that's not going to be necessarily that's going to reinforce for the kids that you put on a fake mask when you go out into public spaces and you're around other people. If parents are really able to be honest and to really engage kids with the struggle, it could be really useful for kids to talk about it in a public space. What I would not encourage is having a mixed race space for kids that was a group space. Because you don't want like the Black kids getting put on the spot and then having to do educational and emotional labor for other white kids. They haven't even figured their stuff out. So yeah, I think if you're going to do it with kids, that the safety and well-being of Black and brown kids needs to be prioritized. And if they have any sort of group setting, it needs to be cadred around their identities, and it needs to be, the goals would be different, right? So amongst white kids, it would be, kind of unpacking their stuff and learning how to be critical of it. Amongst a group of Black kids, it would be, I love my Blackness, right? Do we give a space for kids to celebrate that? Yeah, so that's what I would recommend in terms of doing group content. And the other thing that I wanted to say on this is we actually have some of our subscribers, some of our mods working, and those of you who are in the Facebook group, there will be posts about this really soon. We would love as many volunteers as possible. We, as Safety Pin Box, we have so many things going on right now, which is all really exciting. So many.
We can't even talk about most of the things, but there's a lot going on. So
it'll pop up on your timeline, you'll be like, and we'll be like, yeah, we've been working on this for months. But which is really exciting, but that means we do not have the capacity to do a social media campaign or meetups or any additional labor around the kids' content. We just don't. So,
and side note, we wanted to price it so that families could really afford it also. Obviously, we still are doing all of the normal things we do about giving back and all that. But for us, we really wanted to make sure that all families would find this financially accessible for them. So
yeah.
That's the other piece.
So, yeah. And so
we couldn't hire a new employee based on sales of this is what I'm trying to say.
No. We should not.
No.
So what that means is actually an opportunity for y'all to do some work, right? Because you don't actually need us to organize y'all. So some of the mods have already been having a discussion in the main group the mod group for the STB Facebook page. Mods have been having a conversation already about trying to come together and plan people doing the series together and connecting online around it. So there would be a launch date. We're going to deliver the first week of June, but it sounds like they're going to pick a launch date. Whoever is involved will pick a launch date, and all the families will try to start on that date, and you'll do week by week, sort of how we do the regular curriculum, try to do it together. And you might have some check-ins, like the Safety Pin Sunday check-in, or you might have Facebook Live panels, but none of that stuff will be hosted by us. And if it happens, it will be because a group of parents got together that were STB members who said, yeah, we want to do this, we want to facilitate this. So that's how it might happen on a larger scale in your local, if you're just thinking about your town, I want to have a group. Yes, please don't breach our terms of agreement. Don't make copies of our thing and pass it around. That's really fucked up. Don't do that. I think you could tailor it to do a mixture of one-on-one and group stuff for kids and parents to do together. I don't think you would want to do it all in a group because these are really difficult conversations and kids need to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's my
yes. I don't have much to add except for to say the one thing I thought was cool was potentially the dinner conversations could be something that folks could use in group settings. So that could be one thing that you say, okay, we'll do all of our other work separately, but the dinner conversations we can do as a group. So that would be one easy way to kind of tailor it, which wouldn't require too much thinking on your part. So
the dinner conversations would be a great way to get the kids involved, and the parent pre-work, having the parents talk through the pre-work together would be one where you could just have the parents meet up. And then the only last thing I'll say on this is if you do group stuff, and for STB kids in general.
That sounds kinky.
You You need to get the dads involved. Because I know too many moms, even moms within the same family or whatever, where the dads are not involved in these conversations at all. And most of our SPB subscribers are women for very obvious reasons. So if you're having a meetup and it's all the moms teaching all the kids, no, you need to make your husbands, they got to show up and come and learn too. And really use that as a way to pull your husbands in it and the father of your kids into this process as much as you possibly can. We know a lot of them are resistant, or there's a lot of reasons for that. But like when I did work in the church, it was like when it came to kids, it was mostly all the women did all the child care and did all the, you know what I mean, did all of the spiritual formation for kids.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because we talk all the time about how obviously in movement spaces, that's all women, almost all women. And Safety Pin Box, not just our group, but our subscribers are also almost all women. Interestingly enough, playing some numbers for our meeting earlier today, and even on our Facebook page, 83% of our Facebook page likes are women, only 11% are men. So it holds up like across the board. Like there's no time at which men are actually stepping up in this way. So yeah.
It would be really dope to hear about an SPB dad group who was really ready to take on this shit. I don't know that it exists in the world.
I don't think it does.
I don't think it exists. But, thinking about and not just automatically assuming that, your kid's father doesn't want to be a part of that process, invite them in. Talk to them about why it's important to you. Don't just reach out. If you're reaching out to get a group together, don't just reach out to mom.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to the dads too. That would be my.
That always reminds me, Lena always writes white dudes, DOODS, and I think it's the funniest thing. Like white dudes. It makes me laugh. Okay, 2 more questions. Next question is, I've seen Leslie use hashtag Black Tax. What is that all about? What is that all about? What'd you say?
I need to know too. I think
you need to know too? So Black Tax, when I use Black Tax, I use it in situations where a Black person doing a job or in the world is asked to do something more or something different than their white counterparts simply because they're Black. Most recently, I was using it in reference to the way that folks have been talking about President Obama and his $400,000 speaking engagement, which I just think it's interesting. There's 2 things at play. One is a critique of him accepting this large amount of money from corporate entities, and that's a conversation that can be had, and it's fine, whatever. The second conversation, which is where I see people like Van Jones saying things like, he needs to do a poverty tour before he does any speaking engagements. Does he work for you anymore? I'm just trying to understand at which point somebody becomes a regular citizen and can make whatever mistakes they need to make in their life. It's just been really interesting to me. And it happens a lot of times, we'll see in workplaces and in industries, generally speaking, where there's just a tax for being Black, that you have to be the best. You have to be better than everybody else. You don't get to come in late like Chad once a week because he got to take his daughter to school. When you do it, it's habitual and you get written up, right? So it's all of these things that we are taxed as Black people to prove our worth in society, because the norm is that we have no worth. And that's the tax that we have to pay continually. And so when I use that, that's what I'm referring to.
Could Black Tax be people expecting us to do Safety Pin Box for free?
It sure could. So why don't we talk about that a little bit, about extra labor that's generally expected of us as business owners of Safety Pin Box, which is really interesting. I know, again, intention is what it is, whatever, but it's been really interesting to see. And I interact with all sorts of products, companies, people. I never see somebody launch a product and then my first inkling is to ask them how they can make that product different for me, or what else they could offer to me at that exact moment. It's like, it's never just, let me see what you have and look at that and accept it for whatever it is at that moment. And it's been interesting to see it. And I know it's just, people are excited, people whatever, but it's a really, kind of insidious interaction of, oh, here's this great thing we're doing. Well, can you do it for groups? Can you do it for teams? Can you do it for, well, can you just take what we put up here? Obviously, is what we have to offer right now. You think we just have shit sitting back here like, you know what, let's wait. I know it's ready to go, Marissa. Let's do it. We don't need to get this money for Black women. Forget it. we'll just keep it in our back pocket and wait till somebody asks us about it. So I don't know. It's been interesting. So.
Yeah, my hair looks so good right now because I took a shower before.
And I'm wearing my slap because mine doesn't. So
had to do a little wash, so I got the day one curls. But while I was in the shower, that's where I do what's my thinking. And one of the things about, which who knows if I should even say it here, but I'm going to, was about how quickly the sales are happening for SPB kids. Because, you know, we're always trying to push additional subscriptions so we can fund Black women. We're always pushing donations. And people are like, oh, I don't have it in my budget. I don't have it to do this. But we know that's not true. And that's why we sell content to white folks, because even though white folks think that they have good intentions for themselves, they need an impetus to buy, right? So there was all these people who, if you would ask them yesterday, don't have $60 to give to a Black cause or to donate to a Black women being. And we put this product out and people have $60 to shell out, you know? So a lot of times, you know, when we first started the company, people are like, well, why can't you just have people donate money? Why can't you just raise money? And the truth is, you know, it's not just that people are thankful that we create content. They would not give us the capital to fund Black women without it, because the product has to be an impetus. Because if we emailed everybody who was already bought and we said, you know what, sorry guys, we can't produce this content, but we're going to put 100% of the funds towards Black women being, you would be livid if you saw our email inbox, because people would be upset. And so I just want to make that distinction, because I think, yeah, I mean, we've made giving a part of our business because we wanted to do that. But I also want to be clear, it's not white people giving us money. It's we allow people to buy the dope ass content that we produce, and we just share that with our people. And if we didn't produce good content and good content that works for people and that people stand behind, they would not give us money. Ally or not, they would not give us money. I'm glad that people are buying kids' content. That's why we put it out. But there's a whole bunch of people who did not have $60 for us and for what we're doing yesterday that today do, because we said we're going to give them something. So I think people should just be thinking about that. And then, like Leslie said, every time when we first put out anything, it feels like a lot of pressure, because we work to think, you know, we're balancing, like, what will people actually buy? Because the things that you say you buy aren't what you will buy. Because you'll say, oh, I want this XYZ, and then we put it out and you don't buy it. So we're measuring that against us being a small business, and what can we actually produce that we can make enough money on it that it's worth it, that we can pay all the people involved. You know, we have to pay a certain amount to even just break even on the kids content, which we fund up front, right? Because we're an independent publisher. And then immediately, like Leslie said, it's just like, oh, well, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this version? I know y'all are excited, but y'all need to chill. And if you're going to ask about something when we sell it, you need to buy it.
That too.
You need to buy it. So, no, we don't have group content for kids. Y'all go figure it out. Follow our terms and conditions and go figure it out. What we put out is great, and it's a blessing, and we're working hard to make decisions on our end. We're not going to, this is not Burger King. It's not have it your way. We're not going to be able to customizable, get down to every little bit that you need, where it's literally two people. But what we do is we put out a lot of really great and awesome content that no one else is creating. And so thank you for supporting us in that. Please try not to make giant requests or demands of us when we put it out, because it's frustrating for us, you know, that we launch something and immediately the first question is, well, why don't you have 10 other auxiliary products to go with it that will make you no money? And also just to be really critical about how and when you give, and just recognize that this is not. It is a business. It is a transaction, because most of y'all would not give us money if we weren't giving you something really valuable.
Yeah, it makes me think of when we first started.
participants in the meeting.
Do we know where we cut
Okay, we're back. I don't know when we cut off. Do you know, Drew?
off? Real quickly.
Literally not even about a minute now.
Oh, a minute and a half ago, so we didn't miss much. Hey guys, we're back. Sorry, just lost a little bit of audio, but we're back. What'd you say?
I said to cut us off mid-diatribe.
Yes, it did.
No, we got all of Marissa. We got all of Marissa.
Oh, we got all of Marissa. So the full diatribe was hers. So yeah, don't do that. I was just saying that we're in Jamaica, and it just reminded me how white people put value on things. It's actually a part of white supremacy culture, how they assign value to things based on what they pay, and not necessarily what they're worth. And so that's just an interesting thing we've had to kind of navigate as business owners that are looking to, again, move funds from white people to Black women. It's something we've been having to think about consistently throughout this entire process. So yeah, Black tax is real.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very real. All right, last question. Here we go. This is it.
I love Black women being with all my heart.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. Is the pool of potential recipients overflowing, or should we continue spreading the word for more nominations? Go ahead, Leslie.
Please send all the nominations in. Here's the thing. We want to give to everybody that applies, of course, and that's our goal, is to continually, people don't get taken off the list unless they're actually chosen. The biggest thing that folks can do is to get us more subscribers, because the more subscribers we have, the more money we can give away, and the quicker we can get through the list. We are not overflowing with anything. I will say I was super excited to see a big influx when we hit that $50,000 mark, and we promoted it a little bit a week or so ago, to see all the Black women being applications coming in. But I wouldn't call it a overflow, and I wouldn't call it overwhelming either. I wouldn't characterize it as all. And I also would mention one of the things that Marissa and I have encountered that was really surprising to us is a number of Black women who would say, like, oh, I don't think I would qualify, or I don't think I'm doing important enough work to apply, or I don't think what I'm doing matters enough to fill it out. So there's been so many moments where I've had to be like, no, you should apply. What you're doing is exactly the person who should apply. And all the work you do that nobody compensates you for is why you should apply. So it's been, I would say, like a weird, it was one of the things that surprised me the most after we launched, was that dynamic. I was really not expecting it at all, to see and hear that from Black women, not validating their own amazingness, in even just the simple task of filling out the form of saying, I don't think I'm worthy, which we even hear from recipients when their number does come up, they'll say, are you sure? I don't think I should get this, kind of thing. So yes, please spread the word. Make sure you get as many of your friends to subscribe as possible, and definitely any Black women in your life that are doing dope work, please have them apply.
And I haven't talked to Leslie about this, but I'm just going to say it.
Say it.
This is what we do. I was thinking about this today. In terms of getting your friends to subscribe, what would be great is if you guys could get your friends to do with you what we're going to call the SPB challenge. And what that is you do the power mapping task, and you can do a shortened version of it. You can show them your answers. You get a friend to do the power mapping task with you, and see if they'll take the challenge to donate $20 to Black women being at the end of it. So if you have friends who are like, oh, I'm not sure about it or whatever, I think doing it, if you can get people to do the sample task with you, that goes a long way. And if they say, oh, we think it's great that they're giving money, but I can't afford it, just see if they'll commit. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do these 4 weeks with you so they can see that they can do it. And I'm going to donate $20 to Black women being at the end. And then if they want to become a subscriber, then that's great. They can become a subscriber. If not, we got $20 to help give to a Black woman that goes directly to that. So that is a good way to get your friends to enter in with you if they say, oh, yeah, I believe in all the things you say, but I just don't know if I have time. Because one of the things that was interesting that I read in some of the comments of when we put out the STB Kids, I'm going to call someone out, and I don't know if you're watching this. I don't know what your name is. But there was a white woman who said, oh, I've been meaning to subscribe to Safety Pin Box for a long time, and I just haven't. I guess the kids one is a good one to give. And I just want to be really clear that you should subscribe before you think you're ready. You're never going to be ready for this. You're never going to be a good enough white person. And in the meantime, we need your money. We need your funds to be able to do the work that we're going to do. And so if you become a subscriber of Safety Pin Box, even the first 3 months, you don't show up to the gym once. You don't show up to our racial justice gym once. Month 4, maybe you'll finally be ready to step in. And in that meantime, we've been able to fund Black women and activists since then. And so a lot of people are just waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting and they're waiting around to do nothing. And, you know, so if you read some of the most motivational books or whatever, they'll always say, if you want to do something, the worst thing you can do is sit around and think about it and ponder it. You need to just do it. Just go for it and commit. So if you think, wow, Safety Pin Box, I don't know if I can keep up with that. I don't know if you can do it. Just try it. You can always, cancel, or better yet, move your subscription over to a monthly donation, and you're still giving back and you're still participating, even if you haven't figured out how to make that a piece of your daily life.
I like it. I think that's the last question.
I think that's it.
That's all we have for y'all. As Marissa said, we've got lots of fun things on the horizon. We're very excited about all of them, and you'll be hearing more about them soon.
Well, see, I don't know. I think we should just tell them.
You go ahead. You do it.
We should just tell them about what we're releasing next month.
Go for it.
So you guys have been asking for group content, and we actually have developed group content for adults, for STD. Yes, that's right. For 15 people, for 30 people, for 50 people, you're going to be able to buy group content from us. We've created whole meeting agendas. There will be setups. This will be the program that we've set up is actually an entrance to doing long-term group work with us. It'll include some check-ins with our team, some FaceTime with us, some accountability sheets. So if you have a group who is interested in some group content, we will start sales for that actually next month. Start talking to your group. Start talking about if you guys want to go in on a group package. It's going to be awesome. And, yeah.
It is going to be awesome. I'm really excited about it. I think there's been a lot of critique of white anti-racist spaces and white anti-racist groups of late. Rightfully so. I've been in a lot of them. Not a lot of great work is coming out of them. And so for us, this is an opportunity to provide some resources and tools for those types of spaces and groups to make their work more meaningful and actually have an impact in the way that they intend to, right? Dee talks a lot about assume best intentions, however, also acknowledge the power structures that exist in society as you acknowledge people's best intentions. And so that's what I like people to think about with regard to talking to their groups about group content, is really assessing how effective they've been in the goals that they set out when they decided to come together. I think if you're all very honest with each other, you'll admit that you're not very successful at all. Mm-hmm. And once you have all come to that conclusion, it's really hypocritical to not do something about it. And so this is something you can do about it. And I'm really excited to unleash it on the world. We're going to be taking some of the content that we've done in individual format and really pulling it out into a different context. And I'm excited to see that blossom. I think it's going to be really great for folks. And I think it's been really needed. So, and
at an affordable rate.
Yes.
It'll be less than pay for workshops. So.
Yep. Exactly.
And much more useful.
Much more. So is that everything?
So,
I can't believe it. That was fun.
We'll keep the rest of our secrets.
Yes, we can keep the rest of those close to the vest. But I think that's the end. I think, yeah, that's it. We'll see you guys next time.
What date they have to buy the kids?
Oh, yeah. So, again, safetypinbox.com/kids. Buy by May 22nd. So you have a couple of weeks to get your ducats together and purchase. And that will go out the second week in June. June 5th is the date that they'll all be shipped out. So you can get started right away and get your summer kicked off in a great way.
We'll probably do a second batch after that, but we don't know when the second.
We don't know when. So you got to get it in by May 22nd.
What you got to do.
So that you get it in.
We're in a tight ship here.
Side note, I just made an image for the SPB challenge, so look out for that. I'll be coming your way
Of
shortly.
course you did. I knew. I was like, oh, I didn't talk to Leslie about this, but she's on it. And yeah, we're doing great. And great questions. We'll see you guys next month.
Bye, guys.
Bye.